fear of being left behind. So what does freedom means to Gen Z in 2026? Is it simply the freedom to dream? Or is it the freedom to get a good education, find a meaningful job, build a secure life, have a voice in the country's future? What kind of India do they want to inherit? Do they say India became a global superpower? What do they expect from their government, their institutions, and their political leaders? I'm not going to waste time. I'm just going to speak to them. In studio, I'm joined by Aryaman, Shivom, and Vivan. And I'm joined by Adidev. He joins me from Zoom, Ruhan, and Jayanti. Thank you all of you. And I'll start with Aryaman. Aryaman, now the entire chapter has closed, Jantar Mantar protests are over. If I have to say, in retrospect, what is the learning curve, what is one thing you would say will remain with you throughout your life, what would that be?
I think for good or for bad, it made protest a culture. I would say some aspects of it were definitely good. It taught people to have a voice, it taught people what their opinions are, whether they're with it or against it. Though it did have some bad sides, I think as a whole, it did have a positive impact on our generation, because our generation, as a member of it, I feel we are relatively politically disconnected. We are selfish, to be honest. And what this protest did is it made us aware, it made us care.
Okay. Why did you say, Vivan, is Gen Z politically disconnected? Because, I asked this question when I went there. There were a lot of young students and they said we are apolitical. So I said most of your demands are political, but you frame your protests in an apolitical way. So your thoughts, Vivan?
Well, I would agree to disagree. I think we're the most politically aware and not aware at the same time. So in a way we are aware because we know what's happening around us, especially through social media, but it's very easy to get caught up in echo chamber, right? So we might be disconnected in the sense that based on what's being fed to us, we might have certain perceptions which may not be true, which can be easily broken, right? And a lot of us don't identify with any particular party or any particular alliance, and in that sense we like to remain apolitical. But in terms of awareness, I would say, especially due to globalization, especially due to mass media, I would say that we're the ones who care the most, and we're the ones who try and consume as much knowledge as possible about what's happening around us.
Okay, let me go across to Jayanti. Jayanti, I have used kinke hain young Gen Z, and I have also used the word India Gen Zified. I have also used hum aapke hain Gen Z. I know these are catchy words, but who are the Gen Zs? How do you define yourself? I mean to say, I never realized that I would be, when I was growing up in late 80s in Delhi, I never thought that, I would be defined in terms of X, Y, Z, I never thought so.
I would say, like, with the advent of social media, Gen Z has often been pigeonholed as a delusional generation to begin with, people who don't care much about what's going on in their environment or aren't entirely aware of it at the same time. So I would like to say Gen Z is obviously the student body currently. It's a group of people who are shattering that presumption. So though all of us, like Vivan said, do exist in an echo chamber where we're constantly being reinforced of our own beliefs, but at the same time, I would like to say we're a generation that's challenging a lot of beliefs at the same time, whether it be mobilization, talking more openly about mental health. So there's a lot of positive aspects to the generation as well.
Is Gen Z tough? I mean, a lot of people say that, Gen Z will come with a lot of baggage, Is Gen Z tough?
I would again connect this to the idea that with the advent of socialization, Gen Z's ideas are being talked about more often and they're reaching more people in a wider audience than perhaps other generations that didn't have this platform. Secondly, because we have the platform of social media, we're able to explore and are exposed to different ideas more often. And it's just that I would like to believe that we're more of an expressive generation. So it's not that we're going to come after you, we're just speaking our mind.
Okay. Let me go across to Adidev. Adidev, it's not as if protests have never taken place in this country. I mean, so the protests have led to big changes. Student protest in 70s, Indira Gandhi was booted out of power. If you have read contemporary political history or post-colonial history, it's not as if the student protest did not take place in 90s. VP Singh's government fell because of that student protest. But this student protest was, Adidev, very different. Why did this student protest clicked in a way that certain firsts happen in the government? What's your understanding of it?
I mean, sure, it clicked with most of the masses. I think one of the main factors that played an important role in this was, as Jayanti said, mass media, social media, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. I think, especially for all of us who are growing up, the students, as everybody calls us, the Gen Z, right? One of the main devices and the main forms through which we communicate is media, stuff like Instagram, and I think through these types of media, our ideas, our values, and especially during this protest when everybody was demanding for the resignation of Mr. Pradhan, right? And one of the most widest forms of this circulation was social media, and I think that's what led to this being such a widespread movement. And if you look at contemporary forms and examples of this,
you use the word movement. Was it an outburst or is it a movement? When you use the word movement, it means it is in continuation. It's happening. It's present continuous movement. When you say an outburst, it can also be past present in the sense. You can say it's past. So you have used the word movement. Is it a movement or was it an outburst?
Sure. I mean, in a sense, it's a movement, I guess, because if you look at the Cockroach Janata Party, they're organizing now. They've announced they're going to be organizing protests about India's schooling system. Sure, the education minister's resignation, the demand for his resignation was an outburst of the demands of the Gen Z. I agree with you, that would be an outburst. But if a specific group of people, or if they continue to protest and demand for certain things, I guess the people who are involved with it, they inculcate a sense of, like you said earlier, a movement. And even last year, if you take the example of Nepal, I think I wouldn't say what happened in India is similar to what happened in Nepal, of course, but I think some aspects are similar in the sense that, as I was saying earlier, the usage of social media and the continuation of these similar factors that have led to this widespread form of similar sentiment among some groups of people. I think that's quite common.
Okay. Ruhan, did you go to Jantar Mantar? Did you personally?
I personally did not.
Okay, fair. Did you do you identify with the issue, or did you identify with the issue, or did you feel strongly with the issue?
I think it was very necessary of the youth to point out the fact that the government needs to be accountable. I think, I mean, there have been multiple paper leaks, over 70, and that is something that we really needed to address as the youth of this country. Personally, if you ask me whether I agreed with the objective that Dharmendra Pradhan should resign, I would not have sided with the CJP as such in that perspective, because if the history was different, if resignations were something that were brought up as a topic whenever any major inconvenience was brought up in the past, if the history was different, then I would have been part of it. But I think a sudden outburst, as you mentioned, just for Dharmendra Pradhan, just because of the NEET paper leak, despite there being, I mean, I think what the government, what the NTA did at least, did take some accountable action. I mean, 47 officials sacked, the NTA chief secretary was removed, the chief of the NTA was removed after 2024. So I think asking for the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan as such, just because of the paper leak is something that I would have agreed with if the history was different, but currently I don't think I would have really sided with the CJP as such. And considering there have been multiple paper leaks in the past, even in Punjab there was a paper leak under the Aam Aadmi Party, I don't see the CJP really addressing that issue as such. But yeah, I don't really agree with
that's your opinion, and you are entitled for your opinion. Shivom, did you go to Jantar Mantar?
Unfortunately, I didn't go to Jantar
Okay,
Mantar.
it's okay. You don't have to be apologetic about it. If you went, did not go, it's an entirely different thing. You know, Ruhan spoke about the Punjab issue. There is a protest that is taking place in Ranchi. 21 days have happened. Your views on it?
See, my views are such what was followed in the central government, and I think demanding the resignation of any concerned minister who has committed the folly of this degree is totally suitable, and I disagree with my colleague over here about that. But when you're looking at the Jharkhand situation in particular, the state government is actually not responsible for the agency which is responsible for taking tests over there. So if the resignation has to be demanded in Jharkhand for the minister who's not responsible for the agency, and the central government is actually responsible, I don't think it plays out very well. Now, in our newsrooms generally, you'll see across the board, there have been talks about, look, Saurav Das should go to Jharkhand, and this person should go to Jharkhand. Why isn't Rahul Gandhi in Jharkhand? Why isn't Arvind Kejriwal in Jharkhand? I think those are very reasonable claims to be made, but they must also recognize that the issue comes from the central government, because the Jharkhand government isn't responsible for the paper leak which happened over there. So, but I'd rather talk about the systemic layer of paper leaks in India in general and how we can change that. And I think the best way to do that is digitizing as soon as possible, the way the world has. And unfortunately, with a country like India, where there are people taking exams in millions, it might be slightly tough, but I'm looking forward to that more.
But then, there's also another issue. How do you look at the fact that when the students protest, and I did ask this question to Vivan, Shivam, when they say, well, it's an apolitical thing, but most of the demands turn out to be very, very political. So as a student, how do you look at it?
तो देखिए अब वो कहना नहीं चाह रहे कि हम apolitical हैं. They're not trying to say that they're apolitical as such. Of course, they have political means and objectives. In a way, they're more policy oriented than political. The reason why apolitical has become a misnomer in our general parlance is because people think apolitical is associated with we don't support any party. I think the Gen Z has realized, and a lot of the smart people in India have realized, that all the politicians, most of the politicians, I'd say, talk the same, walk the same, do the same things. So calling yourself apolitical allows you to disassociate yourself with any particular BJP means or Congress means while presenting your policy in an unbiased way, which is why we call ourselves apolitical.
Okay, Ariman, generally the popular movements have this problem with, politicians. But you can't have democracy without politicians. I mean to say, it's like saying, you want a democratic country, but you don't want politicians. You will need to have politicians. Tomorrow you guys can be in politics. You can be nice politicians, you can be bad politicians, you can be corrupt politicians, but you need to be in politics to have democracy. So, what is your opinion when people come out and say, no politicians should come on the stage, but we'll talk directly, let's not politicize the issue. But the issue becomes political, and that's where you gather legitimacy, because it is the politics argument where people come in, normal people. So, how do you as a student look at this issue? How did you frame the issues when you were jostling with who is right, who was wrong, when the entire Jantar Mantar protest was taking place?
See, I think firstly, the people who said politicians should not be allowed on stage were lying to themselves. If you're part of a movement, you are already political, you are already a politician. And me personally, when it was not a politically affiliated movement, when there were not parties jumping on the bandwagon, I did have some sort of attraction to the movement, I would say. But when
what sort of an attraction? Define that.
That is the first time I've seen something like it in my life, that an entire generation almost is banding together for a cause. Regardless of whether I agreed or didn't agree with the cause, it was something that was commendable. But when they marched to Parliament, I saw Omar Abdullah marching with signs regarding his statehood. And it became an umbrella for other movements, it became an umbrella for extremist organizations, and that is where I think the protest did go wrong, and that is where I think their attempt to distance themselves from politicization ultimately backfired, because it all got pent up and exploded on the day of the march, and I think that also delegitimized the movement to some extent in our eyes.
How do you see the movement? Do you think the CJP is the narrator?
I used to. Now, based on their national team, I think there is a common past that binds them together, which has shaped their ideology. I'm not saying it shapes their present, but your past is what defines your future, is what I believe in, and I think there is a theme there.
Okay. Vivan, do you think that this has permanently changed certain aspects of our politics? Do you feel that it has done it? Because a lot of movements start on a very strong footing, but they peter out. Some don't peter out, and some peter out after changing things around them. but the change is lasting. So how do you see the protest? Do you think that it will have that lasting impact on the institutions? I'm not talking about the resignation of Dharmendra Pradhan. That has happened. That was the first.
I think it's definitely, I definitely agree that this protest has definitely caused a change in how we look at politics 100%, because before this, as Jayanti said at this...
अच्छा, how do you look at politics? थोड़ा मैं personalize करता हूँ. तुम मुझे बताओ, how do you look at politics? Then, you know, I'll be able to have a better understanding.
I think currently, right now, is probably the most exciting time to be in politics in a long time. I don't think we'd seen as much engagement in social media when politicians go in parliament and attempt to use Gen Z slang. That's the effect of the protest. They've realized that, we're going to be voters soon, and we currently aren't supporting most of these politicians. And now they'll have to appeal to us. They'll have to show us that they're here and they mean and they want changes, and they need to put those forward.
Shivam, what is the Gen Z slang? You know, I really don't want to trivialize this conversation, but this Gen Z slang and, you know, this entire Gen Z videos, it has become a big part of that Gen Z film. उनको मतलब जो Gen Z song है, Gen Z meme है, वो hit हो गए हैं. मतलब बाकी चीजें पीछे हो गई हैं, वो hit हो गए हैं. It's like a new sort of a music, new slogans, you know.
I think fortunately the way our population structure is,
it's just the audacity of what they did.
I'd say, देखिए हमारी जो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा आबादी है सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर वो यूथ है. We are there on social media. That is why you have to cater to us and use the language we're using and do the things we're doing in order to appeal to us.
Do you do this regularly?
Do I personally do this?
Use that language?
I don't use the language they use in Parliament personally, but I know many who do. But then again,
no,
it's an
I'm
attempt.
just saying that Delulu and
No,
those stuff.
I don't use those words, and many of my friends don't either.
Do you use those words, Delulu?
I mean, they're not really used seriously. That is, I think, something we use them, but never
Have you
in a
ever
serious
used
sense. I have.
Have you ever used it?
I've used Delulu.
Yeah.
Delulu.
Yeah.
I've never seen him use it personally, and I find it a little cringy the way politicians are. How about they talk in substance the way we want them
Is
to talk?
cringy also part of the...
Sorry?
Cringy?
I think cringy is a normal English word. I'm not sure.
Cringe.
Yeah.
Cringe
Cringe
is,
is
a
not.
Okay.
Yeah.
like you cringe at something
Okay.
that way.
Okay.
But I wanted to say one thing. Araman had mentioned that the past is very important because it defines your future. You can look at it from any party's perspective. There were 8 people from the Aam Aadmi Party who had joined the BJP. You look at your sitting cabinet ministers today. Jyotiraditya Scindia was in the Congress. You look at Jitin Prasad, you look at RPN Singh. All of these guys were in the Congress at one point. So if the past is what defines your present and your future in politics, then everybody should be tied to Mahatma Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi forever and only Mahatma Gandhi.
Okay. Jayanti, do you use these words? Or they're just stereotyping Gen Zs? Or it's far more, or Gen Z is far more complex, sociologically far more distributed? It's like a segment of the society. It's like saying middle class. I'm sure you have different segments in the middle class. Are we just typecasting everyone who is in that bracket as Gen Z?
Yeah, I feel like we're pigeonholing and homogenizing an entire very vast age group that comes from very different backgrounds. I can speak on behalf of everyone on the panel. All of us come from a similar socio-economic background as well. So people that come from a certain privilege will have access to a certain kind of language. So when you're talking about these, whether you think they're cringe or not, when you're looking at terms like Delulu, Solulu, etc., these are the Gen Z slangs of an English-speaking Gen Z exclusively, and our country has a non-English-speaking
Jayanti, really,
population.
pardon my ignorance, how do you make those words? But I really, I mean to say, you have people like Mr. Shashi Tharoor, who he can create words out of air, you know, and you know, I'll remember them. But how do you guys, how do you create these words?
I think they become a trend. One person uses them and then everyone just starts using them. For example, you have the word exactly what it means, and I don't think any Gen Z student can define what it means either.
actually have a
But it
meeting
just
every night.
becomes a part of your common parlance.
What does it mean? I think he knows
To
it.
do well at something.
Vivan knows it. What does it mean?
I'm sure won't, but I was saying we
So-
actually
sorry,
have a meeting every night at 9 p.m. to decide which words we're going to use tomorrow, and then the politicians realize that 2 months later.
Okay. Is that correct, Jen? Is that correct, Jayanti?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Rohan, have you made any words?
Personally, no. I haven't made any words as of now. Later on in the future, if there's a need to make a few, I will definitely.
Okay, Adidev, have you made any words?
No, not as of yet, but I agree with Ruhan. If there's a need, I think all of us will utilize some words in our vocabulary and make like a different form of it. Like for example, in the parliament they were saying delulu, which is another way to say delusional. Like just shortening and reducing the word by a little and then making another word by itself. And
Okay,
it becomes-
I'll take the conversation to a serious note. What sort of India you want to see in next 10 years? What sort of India you desire? What sort of India, Bharat, however may you call it, कैसे देखते हो? कहाँ हमको होना चाहिए?
See, I think if I were to use one word, I would say a Bharat where I feel secure. Secure in what I am in my life, secure with the environment around me, secure with those I have put in power, secure with those who question those in power, and I think to define it in one word, to be secure, because in a world that is changing so much, because I think we're the generation that has seen the most change, especially in terms of technology. That change is unsettling. But to be secure, to know that our future is secure, our present is secure, I think that's how I would
You
define
find
it.
this government accountable?
Most definitely. I think it is accountable, and now it has shown it has reached a new level of accountability, one that it never in the past. It shows that this government can evolve, this government can meet our needs and just not the needs of those of us on the panel. But as Jayanti said, there is a large strata of Gen Z that cannot speak English, that don't have the access to things we do, and I think the government has done a commendable job. I would not say perfect, but a very commendable job at catering to us all.
Ruhan was smiling. Ruhan, do you agree with Ariman?
Most definitely, I do. I also agree with him about the fact that this government is accountable. I think accountability is a term that won't really be defined by one resignation as such, but if we go into the past, I'm sorry for going into the past a lot, but you wouldn't see a lot of ministers resigning actually on moral grounds. I think this was the first education minister who actually resigned on moral grounds as such. So I most definitely think that this government has shown a measure of accountability as such, and hopefully this is what we continue to see within the next few years of the government.
Okay. Shivam, was it accountability out of, the sense of moral aptitude, or you felt that there was a pressure on the street? And the reason why I'm asking this is that when that speech took place, if you recall that speech took place,
With speech.
after the resignation was announced at Jantar Mantar, तो उसमें एक चीज़ बोली गई थी, it stayed with me, कि कहा जाता था कि इस सरकार में इस्तीफे नहीं होते हैं, और वो अनाउंस हुआ था, और उसके बाद बहुत सारी चीज़ें बोली गई, लेकिन कहने का मतलब था कि जो प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे थे, they believe that it happened out of pressure.
Absolutely, most certainly it happened out of pressure. I think there are a lot of ministers, not in just the central government, but in state governments also, who don't do their jobs. And it isn't that out of accountability or out of this innate need that I'm such a moral person that I resign. It was because of the pressure, and whoever tries to tell you that it's because they're accountable is completely misguided. Because the government wasn't accountable, they felt the pressure in the streets, they knew the farmers are going to come again, and the farmers have the capacity to sit for 6 months, which the students might not. Which is why they took back the farm laws, and which is why Dharmendra Pradhan resigned, because they knew that they cannot have another protest the size of the farmers' protest or the size of what this was actually snowballing into, because that could have been, in my opinion, a very big problem.
Why in your opinion, NEET actually became a glue? There could have been many other issues, and this is the common question now I'm asking. And all of you can come in. Why did NEET became that glue? Other things could have been. There are many other things which are associated with students, people who are in school. But why specifically NEET became an issue? Okay, you can start.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it's quite simple. It's because it's the second biggest exam in our country. Over around 10 lakh students take it, right? And also it's because of the pressure, right? You can talk about different things about schooling, the lack of facilities, but the pressure of NEET is something that everybody experiences. I have friends who are giving NEET, and almost every other student, every other person knows somebody who's giving NEET, so it becomes more personalized as well. Because let's say somebody might raise an issue about facilities versus the school where I go to, there are plenty of facilities, so I don't feel that's a personal issue compared to if they talk about NEET. I have friends who are giving NEET, right? And when the paper was leaked, we know that some students took their life, right? It reached to a point where they had to take the ultimate measure, right? Where the pressure of that exam they couldn't take anymore. So it's simply because of the fact that it's a national thing. We all know somebody who's
So
going
NEET
through
affected families, that's what you're saying.
100%.
It was not related to, yeah.
I think India is a land of many countries, and for a lot of those people, exams like NEET are their mobility. It is how they move forward. It matters to them a lot more because
Social mobility.
yeah, if one person is able to clear NEET, the next 5 generations have a easier life ahead. So to each person, even their elders who weren't able to do it, there is a lot of pressure piled up on each generation who gives NEET. I don't think it was just us. It was just us when it exploded, but even with exams, it is that pressure because it is the road forward to move ahead in life in India.
Jayanti, do you concur with this?
So I do agree that it affects a lot of families, but it's also that the NEET 2026 leak is not an isolated incident. This exact exam was also leaked in 2024, and we were promised structural reforms as students by the Radhakrishnan Committee. So when we see that reforms were tabled for 2 entire years and there was no steps taken to implement those reforms, it also feels like a betrayal of something we were promised, apart from accountability at the same time.
Do you guys do you think you'll hit the street if there's another issue like that, Jayanti?
Sure, I mean, I went for this one as well.
So what was your experience?
So I had gone on 6th June when the movement hadn't picked up the pace it did around 20th July, etc. And I had a great experience. There was no pushing, there was no shoving. Everyone was walking and just peacefully listening. And it was really nice to actually interact with people who had actually suffered from the paper leak. Because until then, I hadn't interacted with someone who was a direct victim of the leak.
Okay. Ruhan, one specific question to you. Why is Gen Z on Insta, not on Twitter or X?
I love Twitter.
Why is Gen... Sorry, can you...
Why is Gen Z on Insta and not on X?
So I think it depends on the different sectors of Gen Z that you're referring to. I think half of the
Gen Zs have different sectors?
I'm pretty sure they do.
Okay.
One can be considered apolitical and people who are not informed as such, and one are people who may want to be informed more than the others. So I think X is more of a platform where people are using it to be more informed about the recent updates that are going on. However, Instagram is more of a tool where you can finally see what all the new words are like Delulu and finally bring it up in the protest, and then it'll be expressed in the parliament. So I think Instagram is more of a informal way of getting the news and keeping up with the updates. However, X is a place where you can actually see the direct tweets through the politicians and the important people who are giving the updates as such. So I think it depends on the different sectors of Gen Z as well.
Okay, Adi, a very specific question. Do you think the reason why Gen Z is on Insta because it's less polarized?
I wouldn't say it's just because it's less polarized. I would also go on to say I think it's more short form. You have more. You don't require that much of attention to go through Instagram or scroll through Instagram, and you can just pick up bits of information from, let's say, reels or posts. And if you compare it to Twitter or X, for example, I think most people who look at Twitter and read through Twitter are those who like to actually debate and read up on contemporary issues, such like political issues in society. And I think Instagram is just a faster method for people, especially like the ages of Ruhan or me or Ariman, for example, because we can just look at things in a much shorter duration. I think that's the most, for me, that's the most important thing I could.
Shorter duration?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I think it's primarily because of the dopamine dependency. Because on X you have multiple posts, you have long form videos as well, and they're meant for more that you go through them, you read through them properly, versus Instagram, their entire economy is built on Instagram Reels, which is basically meant to capture your attention and keep you hooked into that ecosystem. And it's also because of the kind of content maturity you see on Instagram versus X, where X has a lot of gore, and I don't think most of us would prefer, if you're waking up in the morning or if you're about to go to sleep, to open Twitter and to see some video of some violence compared to Instagram, which is a lot more filtered and a lot more safe.
Okay, but you know, I always feel that, you know, the short forms can do little, but when it comes to the long form, they actually add up to your academic life. So, in terms of newspapers, in terms of books, Shivam, are they happening, or is something which things that, you know, the Gen Z needs to pick up?
So actually, my opinion is people who read are on Twitter versus people who like to watch things like physical, whatever, stimulus are on Instagram. And people who are on Twitter may not necessarily be political. I think that's a misnomer as well. But the reading, if you disseminate information by reading, you're on Twitter, and otherwise in reading itself, there was an article by New York Times as to how many times does a person drop the book before finishing it in a year. And they did a survey.
What was the last book you read?
The last book I read is called How to AI by Mr. Mims.
You?
I would say it's been a while since I've read a book.
Okay, what was the last book you read?
How to Win an Indian Election.
Okay, Jayanti, what was the last book you read?
I read The God of Small Things.
Adidev?
I think I agree with Van. It's been a long time since I've read a book.
Oh, see, it's not a shaming process. Okay, please. I'm asking because I read books. I'm just asking. So you know, it also tells me that, you know, even the books will need to be. No, I'm not forgetting you, Ruhan. What? When was the last time you did you read a book in last 1 month?
I recently read a book about revisiting the Keshavnand Bharti case. I think I'm not completely done with it
You
yet.
read that?
I mean,
Keshavnath Bharti case.
Yes.
Why?
So I aspire to be a lawyer. I
Okay.
think a lot of people on this panel do aspire to be lawyers as well, and I come from a background where you know, it's more of a legal background, and I eventually would like to have enough knowledge to actually communicate with people, to actually start networking, to already get a better head start and get better knowledge than most peers already, most colleagues my age. So I don't think extra information hurts as such.
Okay, fair enough. Ariman, Independence Day. Do you think that these protests are a passe now? One of thing. It has happened. Ho gaya khatam.
A protest like this, yes, I think it was a one-off thing, at least for a long time. But protest to some degree, I think, such as the one in Jharkhand, there were other smaller protests in Karnataka and Punjab. I think they have become more covered. I would say they will keep happening, but I don't think a protest of this scale will happen again. I think that sentiment is collapsing.
Shivam, is it collapsing?
I don't think so. If the mistakes are made, it will happen again, because this protest showed
Shivam
that
is the
something can
contrarian
happen.
here in this
I think we
entire
can see
system.
tomorrow they're going again to protest.
They're going against the protest. Look at what happened with the BCI chief. The BCI chief rescinded it in how many? 45 minutes was it, Rohan? The entire thing where he decided Nalsar is not going to get their degrees because they protested against Justice Suryakant. And I don't know, that's a political decision they made. I'm not condemning it, but they took it back within the hour.
Okay, okay. So, and last question to you. Do you think that the newspapers which are there and the TV channels, do they really reflect Gen Z sensibilities?
I don't think they should. I think that we are not...
Do they? Everyone aspires to reflect and represent the younger generation.
To a small degree, I wouldn't say very much so, but I don't think it's their job to. It's their job to keep us informed, to give us perspectives, not necessarily to represent us. For that, we have our leaders. For that, we have our social media platforms. And forums such as this should be to make us aware, to give us light on different perspectives, I think.
Okay. I think, you know, this conversation has illuminated me more than you guys, because, you know, that this was my, I would say, real sense, deep dive into the so-called Gen Z life. But one thing I definitely would like to say is that social media platforms, they might be able to create connectivity, digital citizens, but there is no alternative to, I would say, long reads. I mean, there is no alternative to long reads. When you go to colleges, when you finish your BAs and masters, all of you would realize that there is no alternative to a long read. It is the most enriching experience which you will have, because being constantly active is one thing, but the power to deactivate yourself from the context and study, I think, is the most, I would say, enjoyable thing I as a student have done, because it stayed with me. And on this note, I would close this program, and I would say that India is truly gensified in a positive way. It's unlike what happened in Nepal, unlike what happened in Bangladesh, unlike what has happened in Sri Lanka. In India, they have become part and parcel of our political process, which is very good. They have been absorbed by the process, and that's the beauty of Indian democracy. And to my viewers, thank you and good night. I'll see you next week at the same time.
लास्ट टाइम कश्मीर गई थी ना, वहाँ खाया शहद, पर उसके लिए कश्मीर जाना पड़ेगा। अरे कश्मीर क्यों जाना, कश्मीर ही यहाँ आ गया।
सुंदर वादियों में महकती खुशबू और रंग बिरंगे फूल, इनमें से शहद निकाल कर जमा किया जाता है असली शहद, लायन कश्मीर हनी।
असली शहद, असली स्वाद।
A crisis that has shaken the foundation of our education system and left over 22 lakh students in a state of absolute despair.
कटोरा लेके नौजवान भीख मांगता रहे, यही चाहते हैं मोदी जी।
Mental agony, the mental stress that they will have to go through.